and
It's
make
not
myself.
easy.
It's
You know, I
it's
got this
hard.
GoPro camera now, right? So I used to have a YouTube channel, just motocross and mountain biking in California. It's different when you have the camera on top of your helmet and it's facing outward and there's cool trails and you're doing these jumps and everything. But then now when I have this GoPro and I got the stick and I'm walking around in public, I have so much more respect now for people that actually do this stuff and they make it seem so natural because I'm telling you, even if you're in a foreign country and you're pretty sure they don't speak English, it weighs on you. You're like, wait, they're still watching me. Or you get all this, primal kind of thoughts that go through your head, and it's hard to focus on, okay, what you're supposed to do, the stories you're trying to tell, and everything that's going on, right? It's very difficult. So I have a lot of respect for these guys.
It is. It's one thing that I've found is, and I was mentioning this the other day, is so I will generally we'll have a really nice conversation and I'll make a valid point about a subject, but then that valid point I feel needs backing up with another valid point. So I'll end up on a tangent just to validate that point that I've already made. But then the point that's the validation point, I'll need to validate that one as well. So I end up down
Yeah,
a path and then forget what, I don't come back to the original point.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. I think it's going to happen at least with us a few times this
oh,
episode,
I can
but
guarantee it.
it's kind of the same for you too, right? Because you want to be interested in your own things that you want to ask, but you also have to think about what does the audience expect, and then how do you ask the right questions versus letting the guest speak when they want to speak. When they're trying to make a point, you don't interrupt. It's a very difficult thing. It's almost the same as going out and making a travel vlog as well, right?
It
It's kind of the
is.
same concept.
It's that you have I always have like a skeletal framework. I do my research and put it all down, and I think, oh yeah, I would like to get into that and get into that and get into that. And then by the end of it, when I have like 3 or 4 hours of rumination after recording an episode, I'm like,
I should have asked that.
I
I should have,
yeah,
yeah.
I didn't get to that point. Oh, I didn't push them hard enough on that. I let them off by saying that, and I do it every single time. But I always have good feedback, so it's only from my perspective because I know what the framework was. So,
Yeah.
but it is. I do have a newfound respect for anybody that records content and especially serious content and puts it out
That's what I
there.
was getting at too. Yeah. If you're just talking about run of the mill standard things,
Yeah,
then it's safe, right? You don't really have to worry about somebody judging you or attacking you in the comments. But I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to make my own content was I was looking at who's making content and I'm seeing all these people that they're giving opinions on whether it's living around the world or macroeconomics or geopolitical stuff. And they're talking about, say, Mexico and these cartels. They've never stepped foot in Mexico, right? They have
yeah,
no idea. They don't speak Spanish. They have no local connections. And I started noticing there's all these people that are using clever marketing tricks and trending music and templates to gain followers and then to monetize. I'm like, if they can do that, I have all this lived experience. I've done way more things than them. I'm already doing like living the life that a lot of these people are talking about.
hmm
Why can't I make content? But I made a deal with myself. I wouldn't make content unless there was like a deeper message behind it. I wasn't just going to make dopamine motorcycle content. So
yeah,
when
yeah.
I'm riding in Vietnam, I'm pulling off to the side in some rice field and there's nobody else around. And I'm talking about why I left aerospace or why people are depressed in the modern world, right? It was going to be this idea about I can easily gain followers and put content out about riding northern Vietnam, but I don't want to do that. I think there's enough of that just superficial, just dopamine click stuff that's out there, right?
It's
I didn't want to add to that.
yeah, it's that what really it gets my goat, and I see it. I don't know how it manages to get onto my feed because about a month ago, I got my feed exactly where I wanted it. It was like really good content all the time, really interesting stuff, and then all of a sudden, I must have watched one video and stuff's crept back in where it's some young 20 something year old that doesn't have enough life experience saying the reason why you're doing this is because of XYZ and you can be a millionaire like me. And I'm just thinking, stop chatting shit, stop it. Just no, but you haven't got enough life experience to be giving anybody
Exactly.
advice. You haven't traveled to enough places in the world to be offering any amount of wisdom whatsoever. Just get on with your own life.
Yeah.
and leave it to people that actually have it, wisdom to impart to everybody else. But it seems to be every man and his dog at this moment in time that just wants to almost ride this influencer culture.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it speaks to the modern script as well, right? People are
mm,
just getting burned out and they realize it's so hard to get ahead now with inflation and AI and globalization. And you ask like young kids in America what they want to be when they grow up. It's not doctors, it's not engineers, it's not astronauts. They want to be YouTubers,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
They want to be YouTubers. Meanwhile, you ask the same group of kids in China, it's the opposite. They want to build, they want to be engineers, they want to be astronauts. And I think the scary part of this is not only is it kind of watering down and making the scroll so fake, but you extrapolate this 20 years from now, these next generations.
It's
How do these
dangerous.
countries compete, right, on a global stage?
I mean, there's a really good. So I always, my daughter, she's 10 years old, and I've never bought her a pair of Crocs ever. I won't.
Good dad.
I categorically will not buy any pairs of Crocs at all. And if they end up in my house, they'll get thrown out very quickly. Um, Based on the story behind them, and I don't know whether you know this, the reason how Crocs came to be. So, Owen Wilson, Luke Wilson, he was in a film called Idiocracy,
Yeah,
which is basically got cryogenically frozen, went 1,000 years in the
yeah,
future, and
it's a classic.
basically everybody's dumb. And they wanted some footwear to fit with this world where everybody's IQ's like 30. And Crocs is the footwear that they came up with. And
God.
every person seems to be wearing them at the minute. And it's almost like on a microcosmic level, that's the direction that we're sort of heading in, which is scary to say the least.
Yeah, I think, you look at the educational system, and they don't teach critical thinking. And this is based on this Prussian school system, right? That was then adopted by these industrialists to bring to the West. And they basically wanted worker bees that were
Hmm.
just smart enough. George Carlin has a bit about this. They want people just smart enough to run the machines, but not smart enough to ask questions
Yes.
about why they're getting worse and worse pay, why there's less rights, all this kind of stuff, right? So people are not taught how to think. And I don't know if, some people are just gifted a certain way and they think differently. I don't know what it is, and they just never really fit into that system. And they were always able to think for themselves. I don't know exactly what that is, but
I know, I don't know exactly what it is, but I know exactly what it feels like because throughout all of my schooling, I was the unruly, rebellious one that got
same
into
here.
trouble because
Yeah,
I remember getting thrown out of a class once. Not for anything crazy. I got thrown out of a class for asking why. And I remember he was a French teacher. I won't mention his name. But I remember getting thrown out the class because I asked him. I questioned his, authority, or I questioned what he was asking us to do, rather than just follow along blindly and say, "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." Uh, and I think that I've always had that streak in me, which is rage against the machine, you rebel without a cause. That sort of I
yeah, me
don't.
too.
I just want. Well, I've mentioned it before. So the second guest that I had on the podcast was my life coach of, God, how many years now? 6 years, Kathleen. And um, one of the big things or the big changes that's happened is money was always my goal. I always wanted money. Money was the driver in everything that I did. So I owned a contracting firm. I owned other businesses, and money was the be all and end all. If a contract was worth 10, 15, 20,000 pounds less, then I'd go for the other one, regardless of what was entailed.
Mm.
And then when we did an exercise called 7 Levels Deep, I've mentioned it before on the podcast. It's really good exercise where you get to the root of the reasoning of why you want that money. And I did it, and it turned out that it wasn't money at all that I wanted. It was freedom. I wanted the freedom
Yeah.
to be able to do what I wanted, when I wanted, how I wanted, wherever, and with whomever.
This is essentially my message, right? This is the modern sovereign message. You don't even
Yeah,
have to ask me the question. I mean, that's basically it.
and I think this is the problem, that this is where a lot of the discourse comes from within society. I think now this division is the the control that's exercised by governments and by authorities over the population. It People get so frustrated, and I don't think they know what they're particularly frustrated about, so they lash out at X, Y, and Z. And then, we've seen in the States and as we've seen in the UK, it's generally at the minute the lashing out is against immigrants or vice versa. When that's not actually the problem. The problem is the people that are in power and in charge making these rules for you to abide and live by. Um, so yeah, I mean, would you agree with?
I mean, yeah, I think the ruling class, a lot of them have spent generations, especially in Europe. You have these dynastic, like banking families, for example, and whether it's old money or new money, they want to keep their money.
Mhm.
And these social engineers, let's call them, they they want us divided amongst race and sports teams and all of these things. It's all bread and circus.
Everything and
It's
anything.
it's all bread and circus, right? As long as we're not focused on them
Yeah,
and what they're doing to us. I mean, the real battle right now for us, regular people, is the 99% against the 1%. It's the people that are controlling this stuff and want to extend their rule and gather up resources and subjugate us through various means and propagandize us. And the real battle that people need to focus on is not their neighbor. It's the person in government. It's the person that's telling them to fight this other person. It's these magnets of tech and social media. And these algorithms, they're designed for this. They're designed to polarize and keep us this way. There was a documentary a few years ago called The Social Network, and it talks about these very things. It interviews the engineers and the top executives, and they basically say this, right? It's their
it's just
goal. They want to
it
keep us
create
divided.
it creates that echo chamber it gives you almost like a warped view on what the real world actually is. You think that everybody outside hates X, Y, and Z, when in reality, that's basically a minority that's emphasized and magnified upon social media. When if you actually went out and spoke to people, you know, we have it. Well, you have it in the States, you have it in America, in the UK. Sort of the whole left wing and right wing thing, and I've had politicians on the podcast and political commentators, and you know, I'm certain that 95%, maybe even more, people are centralist. They they
Yeah.
they don't lean that much left or that much right, and they're generally middle of the road. But because of you see what's on social media and mainstream media, you think everybody's on one side of the aisle or the other. When in
Yeah.
reality, that's probably not the case.
Yeah. I think most people, they agree on most things.
Hmm.
And the problem with government, let's choose the US because that's where I'm from. Whether it's red or blue, Democrat or Republican, nothing really changes, right? There's
No.
always going to be, I think I just put this in my recent article as well. There's fringe topics that are changed, right? That are super important to that side, that
Mm.
team, the red team or the blue team, right? But the core issues, they never change. There's always more war. There's always more central bank printing. There's less freedom. There's more surveillance. These things never change because it benefits the state. It benefits
Yes.
the people at the top. But they keep us divided, right? And then they throw us a bone every once in a while for our team, and then we hope in 4 years or 2 years, whichever country you're in, that it's going to change teams. But they're so propagandized that they don't realize that these core issues never really change.
No,
That's the sad part.
it's that age old illusion of choice. You think you're
Yeah,
getting a choice when in fact, like, yeah, I've lived in the UK, it's Labour and Conservative, or that's what it's been throughout my whole life, which is red and blue. Um, and I've lived through two governments of each, and nothing. You wouldn't be able to tell. I wouldn't be able to
no,
tell you the difference throughout any year
the
what
fringe
changed.
things might change, but the core stays the same. It's like it's a uniparty all around the world. They have uniparties,
Yeah, well,
basically.
that's it's set up that in that respect to make sure it just keeps everybody quiet. Oh yeah, you if
Yeah.
you don't like these, you can choose them. When in fact, you probably if you actually sat down and looked at it objectively, you'd choose neither because both of them are
Well,
pretty bad.
Well, I think this is why they wanna keep us distracted, and that's why
Hmm.
these professional sports players, they make so much money, and there's so much money involved in these types of things. whether it's Hollywood or Netflix as well, because after you're done with your job, you commute home, and then you're burned out. You don't have time or energy to research these things and figure out, how am I getting screwed?
Mm.
What is the reality actually composed of? And how do I change my situation within it? You just sit down on your couch, you open up a beer, you watch Netflix, then you go to sleep and then you repeat it again, right? I think this is what they want in a lot of
Yeah,
ways.
it's
Yeah.
it's almost like that. I do. I've got a bulldog, and you take him. If you don't take him out for a walk, he's a nightmare. He wants to fight me all evening. He'll sit there and he'll like, come on, come on. I want to get all this energy out. If I take him out on a long walk, he's knackered and he's quiet in the corner and doesn't move. If a government and a society keeps you working all hours it can send and keeps you stretched to the limit,
Yeah.
whether it be through taxation, low wages, high cost of living, all the things that we're seeing now, you haven't got time or the energy to critically think, like, hang on a minute, this isn't right. Why is this not actually why is it not serving me anymore? And I think that is part of the problem. People are just working too much. They're working so much more than what um, my parents used to. My parents was, 90, they had a lot of free time. Whereas now you don't have free time because you've got to have a side hustle because you've got to have to pay your bills at the end of the month.
Yeah. It's like this. You see it on social media. If you want to escape the matrix or whatever, use your 9 to 5 to fund your 5 to 9, basically, right? So after you get off work, that's when you have time to build your side hustle to then escape. It's not even a 9 to 5 anymore, right? It's most mid-level and senior level jobs. It's more like 8 to 6, right? And then plus a commute. And all these remote workers, they're getting called back to the office, right? So when I grew up, it was just my dad working. My mom stayed at home. My dad was around to coach my baseball team and my brother's baseball team. We went riding dirt bikes every weekend. You can't really do that anymore. Just to get ahead without kids, even, you
Mm,
need dual income, right? You
yeah,
need
but
a man and a woman both earning pretty well to live in a nice or decent place in an actual house, just to get the down payment and all this other stuff, right? Just to have that's like the new middle class, is to
yeah,
have like
and
two
even
people that
then,
make $100,000 or more in a big city in the US.
they're living underneath what used to be middle class standard. I mean, it is sort of in essence the middle class, but they're not living as well as the middle class did, back in the 80s and 90s. Nowhere near. And I think I've written I haven't published it, but I've written a bit sometimes just to get it out of my head. It might go into the book that I'm flirting with writing. I've got a
Uh-huh.
load. I've got about 40,000 words, and I'm not sure
Wow.
whether to put it into a book or not. But ultimately, I talk about this construction because I don't think it's happened by chance. I don't think the state that we're in, where two parents have to work all hours God sends to provide for a family. I don't think it's just happened by happenstance. I think it's been designed, and I think it's been built to make sure that people keep subjugated to an extent, as well as if one parent's working in a household, the government gets one income
Yeah.
tax.
This
If
is
then if there's two, they're
yeah.
getting double the amount of money.
Yeah. It also I think the state, I teased this in my recent article too. The state strives for centralization. They want more power. And if they have a bunch of people that's why the state always attacks these homeschoolers, right? And there's always this
Yeah.
weird stigma about homeschoolers because they're not dependent on the state. The state wants taxes. They want the kids to be, I think it was the Jesuits that basically said, give me a child until age 7, I'll show you the man,
Mm.
right? Because if they can get the kids young when the brain is forming, they can implant certain ideas. We can go deep in the conspiracies, all kind, but conspiracy facts in a lot of ways.
Yeah, there's hardly a thing as a conspiracy anymore, Chris. They're all
Yeah,
becoming
I think a
true.
lot of these normies, right? They need a conspiracy friend in these times, right? They'll
Yeah,
tell you what's up. They'll tell you how what's going on in the world. Yeah,
yeah. Everybody needs an Alex Jones as a friend.
I think he's a little bit of a disinfo. I don't know how to describe him or classify him
He's a
yet, but
little bit out there. I'll put it
Yeah, I
that
think his
way.
early years were different than his years now. But yeah, I think the state it optimizes for centralization and for more power, right? If you have a
Mm,
budget for every year, you want to hit that budget. And with inflation and being that close to the money printer, let's say, because they get the first dibs on the money, they want more budget, they want more power, they want to control various aspects of the society. And if you're someone that wants to break away from the system, you're not you're that's why they put kids on Ritalin. Like when I was 9 years old, they said, "Hey, this kid, he's out of control. We need to control him. He needs Ritalin." Right? This is what they do with people or kids or adults that kind of break away from the system and
mm,
say, you know what, something's wrong here. And there's a quote by I forget who it is, but it says it's no measure of a man to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And I think
mm. I
that's
like that.
really true. It's like, why would I want to fit into the society that's so I mean, there's all these things coming to fruition now, but the underlying sickness, let's say, it's always been there. But more
Mm.
people are just realizing what's going on now.
Yeah, I think that's I mean, my awakening, um, and I think it was accelerated because of the pandemic and because of
Yeah. Woke up a lot
COVID.
of people.
I
Yeah.
think it I think I was on the way to waking up, and then that kind of shocked me into, "Oh, shit, everything that I maybe believed is becoming true, and it's all being proven." Um, and when people are trying to be bribed by fries and a burger to take an injection that
Oh,
supposedly
de
saves them.
Blasio.
I
Yeah. Crazy, right?
I
That's like
remember
you talk about idiocracy, right? I mean, we're in it. We're in it right now.
I re
2020 is when it started.
I remember watching that, uh, thing, and I thought, is this a skit? Is this like a Saturday Night
Yeah.
Live?"
Well, this is like a simulation. This is proof of the simulation, right? This can't
It's
be real.
so strange. Like, it was so surreal, and then but you see it quite often, and I think this is one of the things that frustrates me about it all, and part of the reason why the podcast is called what it's called is I'm sick to death of we've seen it recently. So obviously everybody has seen what's going on with Iran and Israel and America. Every single sort of politician or authority that has come out and spoke on it has said something fucking different. So what's the truth? Like,
Yeah.
if you don't know, I'd rather you come out and say, you know what? I have no idea what Trump was thinking. I'm not privy to that information. Just don't lie. Don't bullshit to people.
Yeah.
Um, it's so strange. It is very, very weird, that whole I got to say something. So even if I don't know, I'm going to say something that's not true, and then I'll pay for it if I get found out later.
Yeah, I think that's how the state works as well, right? They want to be this is we saw this in COVID as well.
Mm,
There's they're almost like I used to write about this before. It's like with this rise of atheism, these atheists, they're really not atheists. They still believe in God. Their God is just government and science. And these people like Fauci are like the new priest class,
mm,
right? They cannot be questioned. That whatever comes out of their mouth is like a priest in a church. It's gospel.
yeah.
And the state needs to be in a position where they're the source of truth, right? And they fact check everything else. But then you have to question or ask who fact checks the fact checkers, right? And
Yeah.
this is the problem we get into with all this AI and where they're getting their source material from. And you look at their government contracts and their government links. It's a scary future in a lot of
Mm.
ways, right?
Yeah, well, is it the Philippines that have just sworn in an AI uh, like
I think it
member of
was
parliament?
Kazakhstan or one of the stands in
Yeah,
the Central Asia.
I
Yeah.
can't remember who it was. I'll have to research that. But yeah, it's I saw the video where there was like mass uproar of the fact that they've brought AI into to government, basically.
Well, I think that's the end goal. I think what we're
Hmm.
seeing, I think COVID was like an accelerant for this to break down trust,
Mm,
societal trust, institutional trust, and trust between people to then depend on higher status, perceived status institutions, right? And Argentina, US, they've already been flirting with this idea as well of showing how corrupt everything is. Look how bad everything is. Well, the only solution, we can't trust humans. This is all corrupt. Oh, we have this AI. So I think in the future, in the next like 2 to 5 years, you're going to see a lot of these countries replace entire departments
mm.
with AI. It's going to start small. It's going to start doing kind of routine tasks. But instead of having like a head of Department of Revenue, you're going to have an actual AI, some kind of bot intelligence that's managing that. And then it's going to go up to, and there's some people that say in the US, this might be the last president that's elected, right? Because of this, if this technology really progresses this fast. And there's certain, certain things going on in the world where they suspend elections, let's say,
Mm.
because hey, we got this open AI contract that's advanced this far. We can't have elections, so let's defer to this thing, right? Like I could really see a future in the next 2 to 5 years where this starts happening.
You know what? And it's quite funny. Like, the reason why I laughed is because, when everything moved from the telephone exchange where you would actually speak to a person and get some semblance of common sense, whereas now it's like press one if you and you just you don't ever get anywhere and you go around in circles with these AI menus. just imagine, just imagine. There's a really good. It's a short movie actually. I can't remember for the life of me what it's called, but basically he gets arrested as mistaken identity by an AI programmer. He gets thrown in prison,
Oh wow.
and it's about 30 minutes. It's not a great. Like, I'll have to find out. I'll post it in the comments. But but yeah. So basically, this guy gets arrested, and he's trying to sort of say, look, it's not me. I didn't do this. And then he gets like an AI lawyer,
Oh
and the
God.
AI lawyer is saying, would you like to plead guilty or not guilty? And he's like, not guilty because I didn't do it. And he's like, well, that carries a maximum sentence of X amount. And he's like, well, yeah, but where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? And
Man.
there's no getting out of it. And it's quite
Dystopian.
scary. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
dystopian and scary. And I think
I
that's
don't s-
with Black Mirror as well. I love the Black Mirror series. It really, really makes you think, like, where's this going to stop? If it's going to stop.
yeah, I don't I mean, there's no real guardrails around this stuff, right?
Yeah.
There's certain like nonprofit groups that are trying to influence things, but there's countries like Argentina. They want to be like the capital of AI. They want to try to bring all these tech companies there. They're trying to remove any guardrails, whether it's good or bad. I'm not gonna. That's not what I'm arguing for here. I'm just saying they're trying to progress this. And Malay, who's the president there, with his chainsaw approach, I think it's all part of this. Getting rid of government functions and replacing it in conjunction with opening up the floodgates for foreign investment and domestic investment in AI and these tools to then replace government. So I think there's this new like space race for AI. And that's why none of these companies in like OpenAI and other ones, they're not going to be able to fail because it's almost like a national security risk. They can't let China, the big bad boogeyman in the East, get this technology first because I mean there is a real argument about this stuff, right? Because everyone's so obsessed about these tools and
Mm.
this tech. It's almost like whoever does, get the semiconductors, get the RAM processing and gets the technology, they could kind of dominate things in the future. I mean, there's a real argument for this
Well, it's that quantum computing
as well.
race.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's I've read a little bit into that, and that's just phenomenal stuff. They're on the borderline of proving different dimensions through quantum computing, which is just, I mean, yeah, it's kind of right up my street, and it's something that I read at like 3 a.m. and and not
Wow.
get much
Yeah.
sleep over. Um, but it is fascinating, and I think there's Jeff Goldblum. There's a line by Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park where he says, "We were so preoccupied with whether we could, we didn't think to stop whether we should." And I think that's what everybody's rushing to this AI bar, thinking, "Oh yeah, no, it's really really good. It's really really," and not actually stopping and thinking, "Well, what's the long term ramifications of this?"
Yeah. I think if you read like the singularity stuff and you look at what these people actually talk about, like, they are atheistic in the sense that they don't believe in this man in the sky, but they
Mm,
do believe in their machine god.
mm.
Like they actually say this stuff. They're trying to bring about this machine god, this singularity, this immortality, whatever you want to call it, to then merge and become one with their machine god. Like these are like top people at these companies that say this stuff. And you're
Which
like, wait,
it
these are the people that are pushing this stuff forward? Like um, like this is going to be Terminator in 100 years, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
no stopping this. I mean, you look at the rhetoric, right? There's no guardrails. It's all just unlimited funding. You look at the U.S. stock market, the Mag 7. There's
Hmm.
basically 7 companies that are responsible for like 90% of the growth, and they're all tech. They're all AI, tech, computing, all this stuff. So if these go down, the U.S. stock market goes down, and no politician can afford this,
And I
right?
think, yeah, that's it kind of brings us back onto the money and the gravy train, and I think that's part and parcel of the problem. When I sort of made the change of what my goal was, I started seeing money not necessarily having a bad relationship with money, because I think it's, it does make the world go round and it does make things easier, and it does get you to places. Not You'd be surprised how much you can make something stretch. We mentioned before I started recording that I lived in Africa for a time. It's like $100 could stretch you for a couple of months
Yeah.
there quite easily. It's not hard. Whereas, $100 might last you a couple of days in the States, if that. Especially where I was living. I was living in New York, and that they would probably get me to about 6 p.m. of an evening with $100.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so I think what the whole thing with money is, it. We've seen it with. I think it's a big driver with this Iran conflict. I think it's a massive driver with the AI race, in terms of. I think that's part and parcel of the reason why Elon Musk wanted to get involved in government. Was nothing to do with Doge or
He's not
anything
a
along.
good guy in that sense. He's not doing it for.
No, it's not altruistic.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
It was all right. Right. Well, this is the long game. If I've got my foot in the door now, when it comes to sort of push comes to shove, who they're going to trust? Somebody that's been next to them, standing shoulders to shoulder, or somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing with Musk is like his PR campaign presents him as this altruistic guy that's looking out for humanity. He wants to expand to Mars and to Moon and all this kind of stuff. And he built his own wealth. All of his wealth basically came from government contracts and
Yeah.
government, whether it's X or SpaceX or all these things, right? He's 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 directly tied to the government, right? It's not about humanity's greater good. It's about him and enriching himself. That's how this is what money does to these people that if you're crazy enough to reach the pinnacle of these hyper competitive arenas, there's a little bit something wrong with you, right? You're a little bit you're not just someone, you look at these people that they get to the top and then they start these funds and they start donating around the world. I think it's more about protecting their own image than anything, right?
Mm.
It's not about the greater good of humanity. And I think you look at what Musk is doing. Um, when he was at PayPal, he actually wanted to make PayPal this what X is becoming now. What China has is WeChat, which is this everything app. He was trying to do this back like 25 years ago, right? And then the other owners and the shareholders, they struck him down. So then when he went to Twitter, when he bought it out, that was his goal. That was his stated goal for these 25 years. That's what he's trying to do, embedding financial rails, and they want to create this everything app for social media, for digital ID, all these kinds of things, right? CBDC in the future. This is
Yeah.
what they want, right? That's kind of the dystopian kind of put my tinfoil hat on, but that's what they say they want as well, right? And you look at what China and what a lot of these countries say they want, they're doing it as well.
Yeah. Well, obviously with the CBDCs is, there's not a lot of street knowledge. There's not a lot of people like Joe Public that understand how dangerous and how powerful a government would be within your life if a CBDC came into power, as long with digital ID at the same time. And I've tried to sort of bang the drum because obviously our Prime Minister announced earlier this year about mandated digital IDs.
Yeah.
Um, I, for one, will not be participating in this
No, the
farce.
UK did a good job. They stepped up and they said no.
There's not a chance. I mean, I didn't take the COVID vaccine. I will not be taking a digital ID whatsoever. And the problem for me is, once it's in, it will never be obsolete. It
No.
will never be taken out. So no matter who you then vote in, whether they say, "Oh, yeah, we're not gonna use it," or any it's always there in the background, always doing its job, always monitoring. We saw it with, in the States with, Cheney and Bush when they were in. Like,
Patriot Act. Yeah.
the Patriot Act, I mean, if you actually read the Patriot Act, it's fucking bonkers what's
No, and
in
that
there.
that was already drafted up, I think,
Yeah.
just months before the actual attack as well, right? So makes you kind of wonder about things.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched, it's really Christian Bale plays a really good part in Vice, if you've ever watched that. It's a
No.
he plays Dick Cheney to a T. It's fantastic.
Mm.
Um, but the and I think this is the frustration, and I think this is where, like, going all the way back to the beginning of this conversation, the frustration and the annoyance that Joe Public have that then gets outlets in areas where it shouldn't is because of this sort of merry-go-round that we come off dizzy as fuck because the government have been spinning it so fast. Um, and it seems to happen with every sort of big thing. Like, I've got to learn over the past few years, like, when something happens. So it was with, initially over the past few years, it was initially Russia Ukraine, um, which was quite funny because I noticed at that point, as soon as that happened, COVID almost disappeared overnight. Like, literally overnight. Within the space of
Yeah.
a week, it was just, there was no COVID updates on the TV anymore. It was all about
It's
Russia,
like that
Ukraine.
NPC. It's like the NPC meme, right? Where they put the new chip in their head. They're like, focus on this now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
Um,
very true. Yeah.
yeah, and it's when they're sort of shaking the right hand and saying, "Look over here," I'm now then going into rabbit holes looking, right, well, what's the left hand doing? Because
Exactly.
whilst they're saying, "Look at this," and the media is saying, "Look at this," I'm thinking, right, well, what's going on? It's distracting from something. And quite often, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with your recent video, about oil prices. It's down to money again, to an extent where it's very, very dangerous, and you've got to be very, very, very careful with what you say. But at the same time, you can't ignore the fact that this will make prices, the price of oil, rise, and it'll make billionaires and millionaires somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, the whole Iran situation and the oil thing is very interesting. And it's also, I would say, more interesting that the US invaded Venezuela just,
Yeah, which just
what
on
is today? March
just
6th. So it's basically 2 months ago, right? So they
just
needed to secure that before they
mm,
blocked up the Strait of Hormuz and started bombing, these GCC and Iran, countries. And the thing is with oil, it's like a lot of these countries, they don't have supply. Like they depend on this stuff. Like countries like Japan, they
mm,
have some of the most oil on demand, like over 150 days. But countries like Vietnam, they have like 25 days of oil.
wow.
So the Thai government in Thailand, they came out the other day and they said we have 61 days of oil on hand. They presented this to the public as being good government. We're just letting our citizens know. The people freaked out. They went to the gas stations. They immediately filled up their car. There were long lines in these cities in Thailand, right? So I think it's what Trump is doing and what the U.S. is doing, and what Israel is doing. I think it's bigger than money. And you look
Mm,
at the November paper from the U.S., the National Security Policy, or NPP, I forget what it's called. They basically focused on the Americas. They're trying to dominate or at least control all the Americas. And you see this talk about Canada being the 51st state, and now
oh,
Trump's going after Greenland. This is all part of this policy. This is their stated policy. This isn't just some random conspiracy stuff. So what's happening in Venezuela, Mexico, and Ecuador 2 nights ago? They're trying to control this whole area to kick out Russia, to kick out China for military bases, for oil, for natural, minerals, and these types of things. So I think this stuff with Iran, and I don't think people realize, like, I think people are a little bit confused about my content as well because I used to be like motorcycles and traveling. And it was weird. This is kind of going off on a tangent like we talked about earlier, but I did ayahuasca in Brazil in February last year.
cool.
And it was terrifying at moments, right? I didn't go
Mm.
to some shaman in the jungle. I did it in Sao Paulo, walking around a park with my friend on a Sunday afternoon. And
Yeah, it's all about the container, Chris. It's all about where you
yeah,
do it.
what do we call it? I forget the phrase, but set and setting, right? What's your mindset like, and what is the setting that you're doing it in? I
Yeah.
did both, like on the wrong areas, right? But one of the things that it taught me was, I wanted to make content. I wanted to try to explain what was going on in the world and whatnot. And the stuff with Iran, it's like people don't realize like oil isn't just used for cars and gasoline;
Oh,
it's
it's
used to manufacture products as well. And already,
we live in a petroleum based society. Everything, like I banned my daughter from Vaseline. She puts Vaseline on. You used to, lip salve and lip chap lips and stuff. And I'm like, that's all petroleum based. It all comes from oil, and it's
yeah,
basically scum from the pipes is what that is.
yeah. And I used to be a supply chain guy. This is my background, right? So I understand how to get things from point A to point B, whether it's in a supermarket and it's bread or oil used for raw materials for manufacturing. So people don't realize. I mean, uh, Brent crude is already up to like $90 per barrel today, and the strait is basically closed. Like they say it's open, but there's no. The thing that people aren't realizing is that insurance companies won't insure ships to go in or out because the Iran guards basically saying any ship that comes in here we're going to bomb. So the insurance companies were like, why would we insure this, right? So they removed wartime insurance. So it's effectively closed. So it's already at $90. Before this happened, it was at like 72 or $73. This could easily go to 100, 200, $300 per barrel. And that is a real depression. That is a real bringing the world to its knees. Because even though we got the Venezuela oil, the US does now, and they're starting to pump things out. And I just saw something today. They made a contract with Shell. It takes time to refine this stuff. Just because it's in the ground doesn't mean you can use it, right? So
Mhm.
this isn't going to be ready for another like 8 or 9 months. So people don't realize the scope of what could happen from this, and all these countries are getting bombed, and I don't know where it's going to go, but a lot of people are saying, "Oh, it's only going to last a week," or before they were saying, "It's we're never going to attack Iran. They're different. They're different than all these other countries." Well, I've been saying this for at least a year now. It's going to happen, and I was also saying Ukraine, Russia's not going to end anytime soon as well. And I think it's going to go on for a very long time. And Turkey's being named as another enemy of Iran, and Azerbaijan was just hit maybe by a fallen drone. But I don't think this is going to stop anytime soon.
Yeah.
So this is my message. Like when I started making the content, it was because of the ayahuasca, and it was to try to tell people this is what's going on. So I think about my content and my message is like three parts. The first part is okay, here's what's going on. So now I'm talking about oil prices. I'm not just doing Vietnam motorcycle rides, right? So some people are confused about this, but it will make sense because it makes sense in my head, but it's just, it's disorienting for many people. I realize that. And then the second part of it is here's what you do about it. And then the third part is here's me living what I'm talking about. Because
Mm.
there's so many people, like you mentioned before, that are talking about freedom or sovereignty. They're 25 years old. They're talking about leaving the script and leaving their 9 to 5. They work 3 years post university, and they're experts on these things, right? Or they're talking about um, what's going on in the world, but they're in a cafe in Bali. They've basically these guys are recreating their old life back home just with cheap lattes and free Wi-Fi. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's.
they're,
I
they're
mean,
not they're not in the
that
world. This is why I wanted to start making content. This is what my
we
message is about.
we have a saying. Obviously, coming from the UK, we have a saying called the Brit abroad, and a Brit abroad is basically there's a there's a couple of places that I can think of. Playa de Angles being one, which is in Spain, and ultimately it's you go there. There's no like frittata or paella or anything. It's like English breakfast, chips and
Yeah.
gammon, and it's like for me whenever I go on holiday or vacation in uh, America speak. I go to experience places and cultures and something different, and I want to get out and I want to see the real sort of. If I'm traveling to Lanzarote is one of my favorite places. I go there quite regularly. If I go there, I don't want to go and spend my time eating British food, speaking to British people, basically being at home but in with nice weather. I want to be
Yeah.
speaking to locals, going out, getting involved um with the culture. And it's the same, I think travel, it's like one of the biggest things that I tell my daughter as soon as she gets sort of 18 years old. It's like, right. Here's some money. Pick a place. Just go there. Find your own way. Find a couple of backpackers and find your own way. It's one of the best things that I could recommend anybody to do, because what it does is it broadens your horizons and makes you realize that the world is a massive place.
Yeah.
It's not so insular whatsoever.
No,
I
I think a lot of Americans, this is more applicable as well because
Mm.
you're British, so you have all these countries. Like Europe, the EU is basically like you can overlay that to the States.
Yeah, yeah,
It's almost the same size, let's say, same amount of people, let's say. But each country in the EU is like a different state in the US. But
yeah.
each one of those countries has different languages, different traditions that go back thousands of years, let's say, right? So a lot of Americans, I think only like 25% even have a passport, right?
That's
And those
crazy.
of that 25%, where do they go? It's probably Canada or Mexico. And if they go to
California.
Mexico, they're going to Cancun, right? Where the ATMs give you US dollars, not Mexican pesos, right?
Yeah.
And the menus are in English, right? I mean, this isn't it's I think it's I didn't travel really at all until I was like 26.
Hmm.
And then basically I've been traveling and living around the world now for like 5 years. And I speak Spanish and Portuguese, and I've ridden motorcycles in all these countries in Asia and Turkey. And once you once you start breaking away from the script, let's say you find other ways to do it across it changes your whole perspective of how you see the world. Your paradigm shifts, right?
Hmm.
And some of the friendliest people that I've met were in a rice field in northern remote Thailand or Vietnam. We don't speak the same language. It's some old woman who's working the field. She's 65 years old. That's her whole life. She was born in that little village. That's all she knows, right? But I try to talk to them, and we use a translator, and you just see this light in their eyes. Like I met this one woman in rural Thailand. I was doing the Mae Hong Son Loop. It's on the border of Myanmar, and I made a stop because there was this really picturesque view. And this woman, she starts waving me over. She's working the field. She waves me over, and I try to use the translator with her, and she can't even read. So I try to use the
Wow.
speaker, and then finally she understands. Her eyes light up. She's like, "Oh, that's what he's saying. He wants to know where I live and where I'm from." And she's like 7 years old. That's. But the look in her eyes, and she just had this curiosity about me, and she wanted to talk with me. I've never experienced this kind of stuff. Um, Anywhere in Thailand, because a lot of people just go to Bangkok or Chiang Mai. But once you start getting away from the scripts and you start, one of the messages of my content is really pushing yourself. I think
Hmm.
a lot of people these days are weak. And I think it's because we don't have these real rites of passage that historically humanity has always had. Because marriage used to mean something.
Yeah.
University used to mean something. Bar mitzvahs, they mean something still with that community. But we become weak, and that's why you have all these Peter Pans and these people that they don't really feel that they're not really growing up, right? We've created this weak society. So
It's
I
children
think it's,
children raising children. It's what tends
yeah,
to happen, and I had, you check him out, you'd actually like it. He's, Jackson. He's called Life Lift Man, I think, on Instagram, and, um, Jackson's a modern masculinity coach, and basically talks about the one of the biggest things that's the problem for this, and I hate using the phrase, but it's universally known as toxic masculinity. It doesn't
yeah,
exist in my world.
no,
That's
it's a
not a
joke.
thing. It's impossible to exist. I've had so many arguments with family, friends, and people on the internet about that phrase, because it's an oxymoron. It can't. It's paradoxical. It doesn't exist. It's like saying something's wet dry. It doesn't. It's not. It can't. Uh,
No,
but he was talking about one of the biggest contributors to this mindset is the loss of rites of passage.
uh,
And I remember he was actually my granddad. Took me for my first beer, my first alcoholic drink at 18. That was the thing that was done. Uh, Kids over, they're drinking from like 14, 15-year old on their own on a park, like
yeah,
without any supervision. And then people wonder why we have this binge drinking culture. And it's like, well, X, Y, and look, welcome to Z.
yeah,
That's what happens. But the rites of passage, traveling, stuff like that. It was quite funny when you were talking about the girl that you met, and the that it made me think, and I'll say hello to him, KB. He's called Kyo Beniathara, and he's when I lived in Africa, he was the barman at the backpackers where I was staying,
Mm.
and KB took me to meet his family, meet his mum, his daughter, his son, and um, I have never felt love, unconditional love, and I use the word love intentionally from
Mm.
somebody that I'd met and known for a month, like not a long time, and it was just pure connection. It was, and that'll never leave me till the day I die.
Yeah, I think a lot of people they want to romanticize poverty, let's say.
Mm,
But if you go to these places that don't have a lot of material wealth, I think they have what really matters, right? They go back to the basics. They have family, they have friendships. They're one with the land. I did that 7-day Vietnam ride and I stayed in this traditional stone village 5 minutes from the border of China. And these people, I made a monologue in my videos about this. And I was walking around these stone villages, and these people, they're living like it's 300 years ago. They don't have machines. They use ox as ox powers, and they use a plow behind it, and that's used to transport things. You got chickens and dogs and roosters in the streets, right? But I would walk around this little village, and there's all these crazy mountains that look like shark teeth. They just jut out of the ground like nothing, like pyramids, right? And it feels like you're on another world, and you're walking. They have this river that runs through it and they have these caves and I just walked around, I said hello to people and they just had this light in their eyes that you just don't find in the West, right?
mm,
Or in many parts of the world. They just have this different relationship with reality and how the world works and they're just content with not chasing the next car or the next promotion. They have what I think what really matters and this whole shift of escape the 9 to 5 and live alternative ways. I think people are realizing this stuff en masse. And
yeah.
there's some people, like I was saying earlier, they're just kind of born this way, like me and you. And there's others that are like, okay, COVID woke them up, or they have a bad boss that woke them up. And they're trying to get back to what really matters. And they're realizing material possessions is not what makes you happy. I mean, I had the success. I had the nice car. I had the carbon fiber mountain bike. I was the aerospace guy, right? I was helping send the next astronauts to the moon, right? This was my program.
Which which is really like I was thinking about ruminating as I often do when I was walking the dog this morning and knowing that I was coming to record with you and just thinking like it's difficult. Obviously, I had my own triggers and the own thing, my own one of the biggest things that sort of woke me up. I went through um, two sessions of psychedelic therapy
Oh,
using
which
mushrooms,
ones? Which?
psilocybin.
Oh, yeah,
You
okay.
know,
I've done that as well.
yeah. So they were I did and that was kind of what sort of triggered me into the right. I'm not living the way I'm meant to be living anymore.
Yeah.
I'm done with this rat race. I'm done with this living by somebody else's rules and living my life not the way I want it because that's the done thing. But obviously, with yourself, anybody that's listening to this looks at your path and thinks, well, you know, especially kids, you know, that's the dream job. And you ask any little
Yeah.
9-year-old boy that, oh yeah, do you want to work with spaceships in the future? Fucking yeah, damn right I do. But then what was the trigger for you? Can you elaborate on it? I'm intrigued from my own personal selfish reasons.
Yeah. I mean, I never fit into the system, like I was saying, like since 9 years old. I always rebelled against it. And I was a total loser from like ages 18 to 24. I got kicked out of university 2 times, right? And I never fit in. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I turned my life around and I finally got some opportunities to make some money, right? When I was about 25, 26. And I worked at the solar energy company. And before then, I was working like warehouse jobs, driving forklifts and running machines, earning $10 per hour, right? And then it took me 8 years to get a 2-year degree, but that 2-year degree opened up other opportunities for the solar company. And then after 2 years there, I became manager and I was making really good money at age 28. And then I got the aerospace job. I moved states And I didn't really want to take that job because it was part of the military industrial complex. And I didn't want to necessarily do all that kind of stuff. But it was a huge opportunity and to move states as well, which I wanted to do. And I just realized like I'm not this isn't my path, right? I
Mm,
was going into the office and I had this anxiety, I had this pit in my stomach. I'm like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. I had the dream job. I worked 4 10-hour shifts, Monday through Thursday, 10 hours, exactly 10 hours, no overtime. And then I had 3-day weekends every weekend, right? I had the dream. My manager left me alone because I was respected and I knew what I was doing. But I just knew deep down, like, this is not for me. And COVID was an accelerant as well. And then in October, I got my Mexican temporary residency approved at the consulate in Colorado. So I already kind of had a plan B. So
mm,
October I got that, and then December I'm like, okay, this is it for me. And I don't know, I had the capital, I had the skills to get me there in the first place, and I'm like, this is it. COVID is like it woke me up in certain ways as well. I had already been reading about like you as well beforehand, but I'm like, the world is changing, and I can keep going down this path but I know what that's going to lead, right?
mm.
Because I was ready for a promotion. I looked at my boss's life, and I think this is what people should do. Like, if they're on this path and they need a wake up call, look at your boss.
Mm.
What is he doing? Because that's going to be if you really want to excel and do the right things, your boss, you want that corner office. Look who's in the corner office. Look at their life. Or do they seem happy? Probably not. They may put on a facade, but can you actually see yourself in that position? So I looked at myself. I'm like, I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to live around the world. I wanted to do what I want. I wanted ownership of my time, my geography, and myself and
Mm.
what I wanted to do, right? The way I think. And I was never meant for the system. So once I got to the point where like I got the capital, I got the skills, I know I can make it on my own. Um,
There's no
it was time for me
contest.
to leave. Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
that you mentioned that, and I think there's a lot of people that will be going through it now, listening to this, whether they're at work or whether they're before work or on the way home from it. That internal conflict when, because I went through years of it, trying to battle and tell my true self to shut the fuck up, knuckle down, and let's get this done. But that internal battle where they're not being fulfilled by whatever job they're doing. They're not actually enjoying their existence at all. And it, 9 times out of 10, or maybe a bit more actually now, and the table's changing. But the person that wins, or the internal person that wins, is the one that fits into the system because they're worried about what Mary Jane will say down the road if I quit my job and
Yeah.
do what I actually wanted to do. I mean, it is really difficult to stop giving a shit what anybody. We started off on the talking on this episode about how difficult it was to put yourself out there, especially on social media and as a um as a public entity, or putting your thoughts and your processes out there in public, because it's not just there for people to latch on and agree with, it's also there for scrutiny at the same time with people that don't agree with you. um but yeah, I it is a very difficult thing to kind of go against the flow and against the norm, so to speak. Um,
Well,
yeah,
I
it's
think it's a very primal thing, right? We're
mm,
wired this way because before modern civilization in these cities, you had to live in these tribes, right? You had to live in these villages. And if you were extricated from this, if you went against the grain,
you're
you
dead.
couldn't really survive on your own, right? It was about groups and your tribe, right? So it's very built into who we are as
Mm.
humans.
Yeah, well,
And
everybody wants to find their tribe and find their person, and to be fair, I think it's difficult when you have that rebellious streak that, and it you don't tend to, or I never have tended to fit in wherever I've sort of been. I've always been.
me too. Yeah.
It's
That's why I
always.
travel so much.
Yeah, it's always been a difficult thing, and I've not necessarily resigning myself to the fact that that's just life. It's just I've become comfortable with that. I don't need, you know, 2,000 friends on Facebook or where
Yeah.
other social media platforms. I don't need all that adulation. It's like, with the podcast and with speaking to people like yourself, from a purely selfish aspect, I don't give a shit if anybody gets anything out of this. I know they will do, but I'm getting something out of this, which is why I'm
Yeah,
enjoying it. And I think if there's too many people do things for clout and do things
exactly.
for like, oh, for the gram, they
For the
say.
gram. Yeah.
Um, and we spoke about these influencers that do this, and the prey. I have a bee in my bonnet about. I, I haven't quite managed to put this into terms which I think are fair, but I'm going to try live. Um,
Let's
so
go.
you've got people like Tony Robbins, um, and people like Jay Shetty, and both people I respect. I think they've helped countless thousands of people, um, and they've motivated them to either follow their passion or reconnect with spirituality or reconnect with their partner or anything along those lines. But my problem, like you mentioned previously, the military industrial complex, and you didn't want to be part of that. The sort of self-help industrial complex that's about
Yeah.
that I think has brought rise to this type of influencer that can fix your life in 5 minutes if you just
Yeah.
sign up for this program and my
Just buy the
newsletter.
course. In 30 days,
Ye-
you'll be fixed. Yeah.
yeah, and it's don't get me wrong, like one of the best pieces of advice that I still rely upon came from Tony Robbins about if you're in a car and you're focusing on don't hit the wall, don't hit the wall, don't hit the wall.
Yeah.
Likelihood is you're going to hit the fucking wall.
Yeah.
Whereas if you concentrate on making the corner, then the likelihood is you're going to make the corner. Great piece of advice. But it's like, well, if you want to figure out how to implement that into your life, then it's $3.99.99, and it's on an offer for this much at this much month, and it's almost preying on the hope of people, and the people that are lost or having that internal battle, like we just mentioned. It's preying on them people financially. Something just doesn't quite sit right with me with it all. Um,
You're absolutely correct. I mean, I joined a content creator group last year just because I was curious. Like
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
already living this, the early years of my lifestyle. I lived 6 months in a camper van in the Western US as well, right? Before I started living around the world. I never posted any of this stuff in those early years, all around Latin America when I was learning how to dance salsa and all this kind of stuff, right? I never posted any of it. So I joined this group and I'm like, well, I got this, I'm doing this stuff already, this kind of experiences that I know people want to see. So how do I do it? Like, how do I create my target audience and all this kind of stuff? And I started, there's like a WhatsApp group and I started seeing it was mainly men, what these guys were doing. And it was all performative. It was all what's the right filter to use? What's the right trending music to use? And they're all, some of these guys, there was a subset that were talking about freedom and they broke away from the 9 to 5. And they were exactly as I described earlier, right? They're like in their 20s and they're life coaches, or they're telling you how to escape the script and all this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, they're living in this paradise. They're minimizing their discomfort. And I didn't want to, I just looked at that. So I kind of changed the content that I was making as well. And I infused part of this fake influencer stuff. So I was sitting on this bench at day 4 of the Vietnam ride, and there's this giant waterfall called the Ban Giap waterfall. One side is Vietnam, the other side is China. It's the largest
Mm.
transnational waterfall in the world. And I just sat there, and I got there, was the first person there, and I sat on the bench at the base of one of the side waterfalls, and I meditated there for like 5 minutes, and I was just like, I really want to make sure that I take in this moment because how cool is this, right? I just went through these crazy mountain roads. I almost died like 2 times, literally,
Yeah.
with things happening, obstacles on the road and all this kind of stuff. It was insane. And people can check out my YouTube series about it. And I documented it. And I really wanted to make sure because that was my final destination. That's why I chose that route was for that waterfall because it's right on the
Mm.
border there. And I recorded this monologue talking about how people don't travel for exploration and for real authentic curiosity anymore. It's all for
Yeah.
Instagram. It's all for Instagram. So when I was in Japan last year as well, I this is where I got this idea. And then I did the Vietnam ride like 2 months later. But I saw these people entering this shrine. They walked up the steps into the doors where they had the main plaza. And before they actually saw the shrine on the side with their own eyes, they pulled out their phones.
Oh, fuck,
I
frustrate.
literally I filmed like 5 different groups, and I was okay, maybe it's weird for me to film, but it was like I started realizing this stuff. And then when I was at this waterfall, I talk about it. It's pinned on my Instagram. And I talk about how people don't see things with their own eyes anymore. They don't
Mm,
travel for travel's sake. And that this ride for me was like a rite of passage. It was like seeing what I'm made of, right? This is kind of the stuff that I do as well. It's not just for dopamine or my own enjoyment. It's about pushing myself through
yeah,
this, breaking. This is part of breaking away from the script is exploring reality and exploring yourself. So I recorded this message and I was just saying how this is more than a motorcycle ride. This is like, that is China right there, right? Like this is more than just content or anything like this. But I think most people that are making travel content or these influencers, they're not really doing these things because they love it. And I'm actually a very private person. I don't want to be putting my face out here like this. That's why I did these 2 podcasts before. I was anonymous. And I don't want to I didn't post anything from those early years of the van life or anything. I don't want to put myself out there. But then the
mm,
ayahuasca, you're familiar with psychedelics, right? You have you go up, you lose track of who you are in reality. Then you start coming down. There's all these emotions that come up.
mm,
And the guy that I did it with, he's an ayahuasquero. He's somebody that's familiar with this stuff. He's not a shaman. He was just my friend. And, but he's been doing it for 20 years, right? So he helped, you know, ask me these questions and ask a follow-up question to really get to the core because you have all these emotions that are coming up. I've actually never talked about my ayahuasca experience at all in public. Um, at some point I will, but one of the things that it told me was like, try to explain the human condition, right? What does
mm.
it mean to be human in this day and age? And like I was saying, I see all these people that are trying to do things, but they don't have the real experience, or they're doing it from some studio and a comfortable environment. They're not out in the world. Meanwhile, we're talking about certain things where they need to have scars, right? I think the internet would be a much better place if more people putting out messages had real scars, real
Yeah,
lived experience.
that sort of it's so so important. I think that the from a mental health perspective for everybody else as well is people look at stuff and think, oh, they've got a perfect life. Yeah, but you didn't see the 15 takes that they did before it where they fucked up on this word and didn't pronounce that correctly, and then oh, they forgot to switch the microphone on. You only see the polished element, and that sort of traveling. Yeah, there's a I you'll find I like relating stuff to movies because I love movies. I think it's the really good. The way I've described them before, they're almost windows into somebody else's psyche.
Yeah.
Um,
I think any good art is the same, right? Books
yeah,
and paintings as well.
and then when you get a bad movie, you think that guy must be boring, boring as hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, one of my favorite guilty pleasures, and there's the scene with Sean Penn and Ben Stiller's like traveled the world to find him, and he's in taking pictures of snow leopards, and this snow leopard comes, he finds him on this mountain, the snow leopard comes out, and Ben Stiller says to him, he says, are you going to take the picture? And Sean Penn says, sometimes I don't. Sometimes
Yeah.
I just, if I like a moment that much, it's just for me and for nobody else. And
Yeah.
it's like I watch my daughter in plays and playing sport and stuff, and she'll sometimes come off and say, "Oh, did you get a picture or did you get a video?" I'm like, "No, I didn't. I was fully present. I didn't even think to get my phone out because I'm here watching you. If anybody else wants to see it, they can come along." But
Yeah.
it's for me, and you see it with concerts when they go to concerts and everybody's phones out, and it's just like you've paid money.
Yeah, this was the Japan enlightenment moment for me. It was like these people, they're all Westerners, right? They flew
Mm,
across the world to see this really important popular shrine, and you're not even going to see it with your own eyes. Like,
mm,
and people, I started noticing this when I went to Europe. I did a backpacking trip in like 2017, and I started seeing these people that were, mainly young girls, let's say, that would do poses in front of the statue of the church. And then they would go look at the photo on the phone, and then they would say, "Oh, I don't like that one, so I'm gonna go redo it." Then they go back to it, and then they try to look like it's candid photo, and they have no real desire to understand the history of a church and what it represents, like the
mm.
deeper history of this stuff. They just want to do it for the Instagram. And before they even fly back home, they've uploaded it to their Instagram carousel. And I think it's not really, it's just about making their friends jealous.
Yeah,
And it's like a
it's
status thing. It's not, they don't have real desire to explore and push themselves. So when I do these motorcycle rides, it's personally like I want to see these non-touristy areas. I want to
yeah.
see like the real Vietnam. Everyone goes to Da Nang or Ho Chi Minh City. No, I'm gonna ride up to the border of China, and I'm gonna see what's up. I'm gonna see, can I do this? Can I survive this? Right? And what kind of stories can I tell from it?
Yeah, it's important. I mean, like, I don't think I've got, I think, about 8 pictures. Bearing in mind I spent a long time there, I've got 8 photographs, and I didn't take one of them. They're all from other people that took photographs of the group that we were with. And, like, I try dude, so one of the best stories, this is one of the best stories that I've got, and I love this story. So I ended up going, um we were doing coaching for conservation, so we were coaching football to 700 school children, and we're teaching them conservation of the local wildlife through sport. Really interesting. It was in Maun in Botswana. Really
Mm.
interesting program. But after that finished, we got the chance to do what we wanted and go traveling left, right, and center. And I got the opportunity to be a camp hand for the backpackers where I was staying, which basically for 3 days, we went out into the African bush. All I had to do as camp hand was set up the tents, cook the evening meal, cook the breakfast, and take down the tents at the end. And I got to do the walking safaris. So you get to go on a walking safari with 3 guides, and I got to do that for free, where other people had to pay, thousands of pounds to do it. And Martin, I remember his name, he's a South African guy, mad as a box of frogs. He was drinking like white wine from the bottle whilst he was driving the boat out there on the Okavango Delta, and I was sleeping in his tent with him that evening, and while all the other actual guests were sleeping in their own tents. And he said, "I sleep without the cover on. I sleep with just a fly net. Are you okay with that?" I was like, "Yep, that's fine." We had like goose down uh, bed rolls, so it was like really nice and warm. He said, "But I snore, so if I snore, just give me a kick, and tell me to shut up, and I will do." So I remember waking up, and I looked at my watch, and it was about 2 a.m. and I could just hear like,
Like a bear.
well, I thought it was him snoring. So I like rolled over to give him a kick to tell him to shut up. And he sat upright and he'd gone, shh,
Um,
and pointed past me. And less than 2 meters from my head was a 4-ton bull elephant in the
oh
middle of
my
the
god.
camp. And it was the low grumble. So how old was I? About 20. So I'm panicking at that moment because I'm led pretty much on the ground next to this 4-ton animal's foot. And then I hear the zip of the tent open and he's got out and I'm like, obviously the heart's going at this point, and he's gone to stoke the fire because I know this now after speaking with him, because they've got such poor eyesight, that he was trying to stoke the fire so that they can actually see better so that they wouldn't panic. So he shouted me out, and there was me, him, and the guide, the person with the gun for protection, were sat around the campfire, and we watched this bull elephant for an hour and a half, whilst it was eating palm nuts. It was shaking the guests'
Gee.
and everything. So then we got back to sleep, woke up about 2, 3 hours later, and I'm cooking breakfast. And I was like, "Did you hear the elephants last?" To all the guests, I was like, "Did you hear the elephants last night?" And I'm like, "No, no, didn't hear a thing." I'm like, "It was shaking your goddamn tent. It was stood
That's
literally
crazy.
outside your tent." Now I have no pictures of that at all, other than in here, and it's one of my core memories that I will keep with me till the day I die.
Yeah.
But like nowadays, people would want to take pictures of that to say, "Oh, look what happened to me. Look what I've done. Look how amazing my life is."
Yeah.
Um, and for no other reason than to make, the Smiths down the road a little bit jealous. It's that keeping up with the Joneses element.
Yeah, I think it's about likes, it's about engagement, it's about external validation, and a lot of these fitness or travel influencers, it's not about, like I was saying, it's not about real discovery and curiosity about the world and where they are and about themselves, what they can learn from this experience. It's more about brand deals
Mm,
and likes and engagement, right? And you see these people, you go to any tourist area, any attraction, they pull out their phones first and they don't even look at it with their own eyes first. They see it through the eyes of social media first. They want to get the right angle. And they looked on TikTok and they saw, oh, this angle, this person has 1 million likes on this photo from this exact spot. I'm going to try to recreate that. They
mm.
don't care about anything but these things. And I think it's a deeper thing. It's about this. I've made videos about this as well. I rode a motorcycle by myself into the mountains of Brazil, and I did this solo hike. And when I was coming down, I did this monologue talking about how these rites of passage, and there's these voids in people. And COVID accelerated a lot of this because you go through the world, you understand the world a certain way. And then all of a sudden it shatters. It was like a mass trauma event. COVID
Mm.
was, right? And there's this big void in people. And as soon as the world opened back up, they wanted to travel. So the coolest thing, the persona that you could adopt is to be a traveler. So you started seeing this explosion of people that were traveling to Japan and all these places. And they didn't really want to explore it. It was just about feeling, I think, like pre-COVID, like what it meant to be alive, to try to feel normal in some way,
Yeah, yeah.
right? To try to piece together what life kind of was. And I don't think people have recuperated from COVID. And
I don't think I
I think
think
it
yeah.
accelerated a lot of things like remote work and other things that we're seeing as well, whether this planned and orchestrated or organic. I think it was more the former than the latter. But I think it really changed society at fundamental levels, and people haven't they don't understand this, and then they haven't recovered from it as well.
Yeah, they haven't. I don't think society's adjusted well from it whatsoever. And one thing that you touched on there in terms of like the remote working and stuff, I think what it did is it made everybody kind of realize why am I spending hundreds of pounds a week on fuel when I I can do this job from my house. And it was proven that I could do this job from my house, but why are you forcing me to? And it was that almost that realization of some of the systems that we kind of just took for granted and went with. They didn't actually serve a purpose other than to sort of subjugate and make everybody kind of fall in line a little bit.
Yeah, and it set the tone for scanning QR codes to fly, and now we're still scanning menus here in Latin America, right? We're still
Yeah, yeah.
scanning for menus, and if you ask them
Order
for a
from your
physical menu,
table.
they don't got it, right? That so sometimes I just walk away from restaurants if they don't have a physical menu. They want me to scan. This is ridiculous, right? It's the same as the Patriot Act, right? We're still
Mm.
taking off our shoes to fly in the U.S. Meanwhile, the TSA and these companies that do the security, you look at these tests that they have when they mock up these tests, they fail like 90% of the time to catch weapons and everything else. So why are we still taking off our shoes? It's
Yeah.
been 25 years, right? It's ridiculous.
It's it's that almost see how far. Let's see how far we can push people. Let's
That's what they
see.
do. That's what the state
Yeah.
does. It's maybe, and then I think that they use. I mean, there's a book by Naomi Klein, I think was her name. She wrote a book called Shock Doctrine, and it basically talked about this: how these social engineers, whatever you want to call them, they use these crises, whether they're organic or not, they still leverage them to accelerate their existing agendas, right? Because
Mm.
if they try to do everything that they did in COVID without COVID, people would revolt, right?
Yeah.
But if
Well,
it, oh, now we have to do this now, right? And now 10, however many years later, these systems and these protocols are still in place.
well, I remember reading, obviously coming out of the back of COVID. I remember reading the real Anthony Fauci by RFK
Yeah,
Jr. And
yeah.
I mean, I was shocked is the wrong word because I wasn't shocked. It was almost like that aha moment of like, this isn't the first time that this playbook's been ran. It's been ran
Mhm.
before when with the AIDS crisis that was all manufactured, and then the whole AZT thing. It's almost like play for play, exactly the same, but with just different names and different medications. Um, and you see it. and obviously the research that got into it, and you just I wasn't shocked, like I said, because I suppose some people would be, but I was reading it and thinking, and there it is. It's in black and
Mm.
white. It's you can't disagree with it anymore. Like what
Yeah.
I was suspicious of is 100% fact and true, which is like what we were saying about conspiracy theorists. That they're
Yeah.
actually truth tellers more than not this day and age.
Yeah. I think with this Epstein stuff as well,
Oh,
right? Whether the Iran war is a distraction from that, it doesn't matter. I mean, this stuff has been around for years. There was the Duclair affair. I think it was Duclair. It was a big scandal in, I think it was Belgium. Then you had Boys Club in Nebraska, where all these senators were complicit in this stuff. So this stuff exists, right? I mean, these power networks exist, and they're freaks, right? They're sick people, and this is how these blackmail networks and whatnot. This is real stuff. So a lot of us that have been researching this stuff and knew about it beforehand, it's been frustrating. I mean, not maybe not frustrating is the right word, but I guess the frustrating thing in this context is what are people doing about it, right? This stuff exists, it's everywhere. And where's the revolts?
well,
Where's the accountability? People are just going on with their lives.
that
This is what I'm
word
so
accountability, like, so we put the Epstein files. There's all these names in this Epstein file, and don't get me wrong, that's not to say that all these names have done anything wrong. But who's questioning it? What, like, where's the truth? Where's the, if I don't care, I'm not named in the Epstein files. You know why? Because I'm not a pedophile, and I
yeah,
don't hang around with pedophiles. But if somebody's in the Epstein files, not only they might not be a pedophile, but they've hung around with one. Like, so it might, and they're in a position, a public office, they're in a position of power. So maybe let's have a look into that and see if there's anything that goes, and it's like when out of all that debacle, and I've watched all the documentaries and done all the reading, and I've got my own theories on how he made his money, and how he managed to weasel himself into the positions that he got into. It's like the only two people that have, in essence, been held accountable are Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Nobody else. And then there is the conspiracy theory. I think someone saw Ghislaine Maxwell somewhere else the other day, that
yeah,
wasn't in
and
a prison
Epstein
cell,
too.
and
The,
Epstein in Argentina.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's there's a dual tier system of
Mm,
justice. This is just how the world works. So this is what I try to tell people with my content. It's about so when I talk about oil prices and the Strait of Hormuz, people are confused, but this is me trying to tell people this is how the world works. And I'm not
mm.
saying I know everything, but I've
No,
done my reading and I have the lived experience. And I know how to connect dots, right? And maybe I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist as well. But this is how the world is. And then this is maybe you can't vote your way out of this, but here's what you can do as an individual. And here's me living the life, right? So the world is, I don't want to be, I don't consider myself a pessimist. I
mm,
consider myself a realist. This is
yeah,
how the world is. It's always kind of been this way. This is how power structures work throughout time, right?
yeah,
And unless you can be part of that club, if you want to kind of sell your soul to get to that level, let's say, go ahead. But for the rest of us, we have to live in this world. We have to navigate it. And how do you stay free and sovereign and maximize what's going on in the world? And I think if you can see these trends and you can capitalize on these trends
mm,
without, selling your soul or doing these things, right? Like if you were an investor in oil, in Exxon Mobil or something like this before this happened, you can capitalize on these changes, on these shifts, these global shifts that are happening right now that a lot of people don't want to admit are happening or are just ignorant of it. So this is like my message.
yeah. I think that's the whole. So, is that where the name sort of the modern sovereignty came about? Is not wanting to sort of participate in these systems anymore.
Well, right before I made the Modern Sovereign, I wanted to make a content brand called Depth Over Dopamine,
Oh,
which
I
is kind
like
of what
it.
we're talking about as well. And I actually
Yeah.
made a Substack and I made an image, about it and everything. And then I kind of shifted that away because I felt like my message was broader. And this was also one of the problems or the impediments I had to making content was I was too broad and that people wouldn't understand it. But I think being broad as somebody that makes content, I think is going to be an asset in the future. You're not just pigeonholed to one simple thing. But I think this idea of sovereignty and ownership of you, of yourself and your time and your money and how you can live and whatever, there's a different playbook now. Like this new world that we're entering, whether they want to call it new world order, whatever, the world is changing in almost every facet. So to live in a modern way, like the old rules of the game are changing. And you have to understand where the new world is going to then position yourself accordingly.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's one of the big thing. Like for me, it's almost it was almost like a mental checkout. Like I'm not playing this game anymore. I don't want to be part of this game. I don't
So
want to be.
how did you wake up? You said you woke up a lot during COVID. So what was that like for you?
Um, for me, it was. So I'll be honest. The first couple of months through COVID, because of the reading that I'd done, I had a lot of knowledge about influenza and the Spanish influenza and the first one of the
Yeah.
biggest, craziest pandemics, and how that was. There is a conspiracy theory that was sort of World War induced at one point, um, which wouldn't surprise me either. When it started happening, it was almost like that. Oh shit, here we go moment. This is where everything ends, and world as we know it changes, and nothing goes back to normal. And then it was as it always is, it was the illogicality of certain things happening, and it was like, well, hang on a minute, that doesn't make sense. No, like what? I've got to wear a mask,
The two
but
meters. Yeah.
yeah, I've got to wear a mask to walk into a restaurant, but then when I'm down at the table, I can take that mask off to eat. But if I
Yeah.
want to go to the toilet, I've got to put that mask back on to go. That doesn't make fucking sense. Like
Yeah.
that's not normal. And then people, I still see people now, like not as many, I grant it, but driving in their car
By
on their
themselves.
on their fucking own with a
Yeah.
mask on.
Yeah.
Like, and I started seeing things like that and thinking this doesn't make sense. And then it was sort of compounded over time with the bribery of taking vaccines. Then I started like listening to people and reading RFK's book about real anti and Fauci, and then it was just sort of I'm not a big believer in coincidence. I believe in, if you think it's a coincidence, there's a reason why it's there. You've got to find the meaning behind the coincidence. It just
Mhm.
doesn't happen for a reason. And it could be something so innocuous, or it could be something life changing. But these things started happening. And you can't just say, oh, that's a coincidence, like 20 times.
Yeah.
By that
That's why
point,
they
it's
call them
by
coincidence theorists, right?
yeah,
Hmm.
it's by design at that point.
Yeah.
And I think it took probably 2-3 months for me to sort of like go, oh, this is nonsense. It doesn't make sense. And then subsequent to that, I started sort of waking up to other systems and other things and doing the research. I think with the school system, I was already awake anyway, because it never fit. I went through school believing that I was low intelligence. I was the only child in my class that did a lower tier paper in English. I thought I was always quite poor at English because I was always told I was quite poor at English.
Hmm.
I got screened at college, found out I was actually dyslexic. So I wasn't just
Uh,
poor at English. I just struggled to read what they were trying to tell me to read.
yeah.
Um, and I sort of looked at it and think, yeah, well, I might not be good at X, Y, and Z, but I'm better than them at this. But I don't get judged on this, and I don't get graded on this.
It's the same for me. Yeah. Like I excelled at motocross and
Mm,
guitar and sports, right? But I
yeah.
hated doing what some unqualified stooge of a teacher is telling me to do. I'm like, what is your qualifications, right? When I was in aerospace, I got accepted in the Rutgers, a top 10 business school, right? Despite my
Wow.
checkered past. And I started looking at the qualifications of the teachers and the professors. None of them had actual business experience. Even at Rutgers, they're all dealing with theory, right? They have no. I'm like, why am I? I have the business experience, so I'm the one leading teams and leading international supply chains. Why am I going to listen to this guy that's just dealing in charts and theories, right? This is a
Mm.
big part of the educational problem as well.
But that was like, so one of the big things. So like I see it now. My daughter, obviously, she's 10. She learns a bit of French in school, and I'm like, I learned French and German in school. Why not fucking Spanish? Like Spanish is a more universal language than German.
Exactly.
It's a more universal language than French. Like it it was just illogical. So like I'm a very logical. If it makes sense and you can make it make sense to me, then I'm on board all day, and I'll
Mm,
run through brick walls for it. But if it
yeah.
doesn't make sense, then I'm sorry, I'm out. I can't. I
You're
can't.
asking questions and the system doesn't like questions, like this.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think that was the thing that sort of tipped it for me, was probably that upbringing throughout, and then sort of realizing, oh, everything that I feared or everything that I thought maybe is actually true, and it's actually coming true. Um, and yeah, that, I mean, I suppose that's what this it's all led me to this podcast and to
Yeah.
speaking to people about things and issues and points of view that I don't see being represented, and people that I don't see. For instance, like yourself, there's all my previous guests really, but Dean Hall is one of the examples that I haven't come across Dean before, um, inviting him on the podcast, and this man beat cancer twice through
Yeah,
natural.
I saw segments of that, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Everybody should know about this guy.
Yeah, he's a young guy too. He was
Well, yeah, he was like at 50, I think he was 50, 51 or 54 when he contracted it. But then within 12 months was healed of both without chemotherapy. And this is not like anybody saying like chemotherapy doesn't work. It's just like, well, there's evidence here that there might be an alternative method for people.
yeah.
Like, surely we should study this and sort of give this some light. Uh,
Yeah.
and nothing ever sort of happens. So for me, it was, and for yourself, one of the big things is like there is a different way of living. You don't have to be part of this. Everybody talks about escaping the rat race and escaping the 9 to 5, but all they do is jump from one ship to another ship and never
Yeah.
actually swim in the ocean.
They don't really
Um,
transform at a core level, right? They just recreate their old life back in their new spot.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think when I came across your video and then delved deep into your content, it was like, holy shit, this guy gets it. This guy understands what I'm thinking constantly
Oh,
on a daily basis. So there's your compliment for you, Chris.
yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, if you really want to break away from the script, it's a very transformative experience,
Mm,
akin to a psychedelic experience, because you have to question who you are. Like, so I was born in California, but after all these years and these experiences, um, I don't feel like American anymore. As weird as
mm,
that sounds, like I appreciate America for what it stands for in many ways. I like to shoot guns, these kinds of things. But after all the, learning these languages and these experiences, like I don't, it's a very transformative, ego bending um, shift to your perception of how the world works, right?
mm.
And that's how I think it should be. If you really want to break away from the scripts, you have to, it's almost like a psychedelic experience. You have to figure out who you actually are and
You
how do
have
you
to
fit
break.
into this reality? And what is reality? What is it? What is reality? And how do you
Mm,
fit into this, into this cosmos? And once you have the time, like we were talking about before, where you're not stuck in the rat race and you're not watching Netflix and eating poor quality food, you can actually kind of zoom out, especially if you do shrooms or ayahuasca, and look at yourself from above and like, okay, this is how things work. This is how I fit into this. But until you actually really challenge yourself, and this is where the rites of passage comes into my content as well, pushing yourself and seeing what comes out of this. Yeah, I could crash and I could die, or, but that's part of the risk profile. This is what it takes to truly break away from the system and live a way that is truly sovereign and where
mm.
you're not just like the woo woo kind of self actualization, but um really have a curiosity, and like as if you were a kid about the world and about yourself. And you're going to these places. And, I did this life before I even had the GoPro, right? So I was
Mm.
going to these small villages and doing these trips and talking to people and learning more about the world because I'm curious about it. I'm just a curious person. And now I have this camera and it still feels weird when I take the camera out. I still don't really like it. It's still weird talking, even talking to this camera, because
It's
normally I'm out
strange.
in the world. I have my GoPro. I'm on a motorcycle trip. I don't normally do podcasts, right? So it's still weird for me, like documenting my life. But I think I believe in my message so much. And I believe that people need to understand the global shifts that are happening right now, whether it's with oil or the modern scripts or inflation or central banks or why they feel why they ticked all the boxes that society told them to tick. They're a senior manager or whatever, but they still feel empty. Why is this? Well, I was there, and there's not a lot of people that I was looking around that are actually talking about these things in a vulnerable, open way and saying, "Yeah, I've been there. I understand what you're going through, and you want to live this way. Okay, here's what you do, and here's me living this life."
So you're talking about obviously y- your y- the way that you live, as a modern sovereign, and some of the things that so the one of the things that made me laugh, it actually made me laugh out loud. The three C's of death.
Oh yeah.
It still makes me laugh now. Which is, well, I'll let you explain what the three C's of death are.
Well, so there are commutes, cubicles, and corporation, and I think this is where dreams go to die,
Mm,
in a sense, right? Because people don't think about commutes. They just think it's just part of the script. It's just what you do. But this is really a hidden tax because it's a tax on your own time. And if you want to live closer to work, you have less money to actually because you have to buy a nicer place that's closer to the where all the jobs are, right? So that's a tax. And then cubicles are these artificial with artificial lights, and you're in these pointless meetings and meetings about a future meeting. And you know, in my corporate career, I was actively declining meetings.
mm.
People knew I could get things done, so they still gave me promotions and good performance reviews and all these things. But cubicles are, I mean, people talk about, like the movie Office Space, how ridiculous the whole setup is, right? These gray, it's just, I don't even want to think about it.
I remember getting fired once for walking. So I, I had a meeting. There was me, the owner of the business, and one of the other team leaders once, and we had this meeting about a new piece of software. And it was decided by three of us that yes, let's go for it. Let's implement this software. So then that was on the Monday. On the Friday, they had another meeting. It was exactly the same fucking meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, it was with all the members of staff. So there was like 20 people in there. But I said to I won't say his name, but I said to the manager, I don't need to be here for this. We did this on Monday. This is
Yeah.
like an hour and a half of my time completely wasted. I know all what they're going to say. And because I walked out, I'm not a team player. And I got fired
Yeah.
on the Monday after. And I was like,
Oh, wow.
just because I was being efficient. Um, but that's almost like a microcosm of what we talked about, of like rebelling against the system and not actually fitting in because you actually make conscious critical decisions.
Yeah. And then, the corporations, they keep people complacent, especially if you're in a senior level position. Even if you have autonomy like I did, you're still in this position where you don't have the energy, whether physical or mental, to actually pursue your dreams. So I think these three C's of death are completely correct. And people don't think about these things this way. But I like to reframe. I think people, they respond well to analogy.
Mm.
And if you can break down complex topics, whether it's economics or the modern script, in a way that people can feel at a visceral level, they're gonna support you. They're gonna understand it in a way that, because I never heard of the three C's of death. I never heard of a hidden tax on commutes. But this is what they are, right? This is exactly what they are. And many of these jobs can be done remote. It's really just to appease middle managers that need to see ass in seats, right? So they can
Yeah.
say they can justify their own position, right? They see people working, and like, okay, yeah, things are good here. Everything's under control as long as I get my spreadsheets with the metrics and we're hitting our metrics. It's just, in aerospace, they love spreadsheets and PowerPoints, and that was like half of my job. I worked in like an actual spaceship factory, like literally. It was like a factory. Then we had little cubicles to the side, but still, like 50% of my job was pulling Tableau reports and spreadsheets to present to upper management. Oh, here's where we're at with the scheduling and everything. And it was just like the money was good, the benefits were good. I was the aerospace guy. I had a job that people would kill for, but I was just empty. And there's so
Yeah.
many people I talk to every week. They're successful on paper, but they're not successful in their own mind, in their soul, what
Yeah.
they really want to do.
Well, it's that everybody puts a monetary value on that success. That success always comes down to what car you drive, how big's your house, how much do you earn per year. One of the first things that people ask when they meet new people is, "Oh, so what do you do?"
Yeah.
Just to get like a bit of a judge of who they kind of are as a person.
It's deeper than that. It's about how they can extract value from you and how
True.
much can they extract.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
one
what
of my fun things to do, I like in my own rebellious mind, I do two things actually. It was quite funny. You should try this next time that you're going to pay for anything with your card at a checkpoint. Um, what what I tend to do, I call out the wrong numbers of my PIN. So when I'm putting in my PIN number, I will say 2891 like really loud, so everybody around me kind of looks at me funny. Just that little bit of anarchist in me. But then like it stuff like that. It really does sort of just bring a little bit of joy when you throw that sort of little bit of anarchism in there. But so I forgot where my train of thought was going then. But in terms of so you've gone through the three C's of death, cubicles, commutes, and corporations. But then it's not all gravy on the other side because you've also written about the honeymoon phase of freedom
Yeah.
and what happens when that's over.
So I want to clarify, I'm not anti 9 to 5. I mean,
No,
one of my good friends in Colorado, we worked in aerospace together. Now he's a senior manager. He's got, good bosses. He's got a good team. He likes his job. Like if you have a good setup like that, it can work really well. But most people don't have that kind of setup. They don't have that autonomy, the good pay, all this kinds of stuff. So yeah, the honeymoon of freedom is like in my early years and in the van life, I could literally do whatever I wanted to. Right. I could just, if I wanted to chase girls, if I wanted to go to a national park, if I wanted to do a Patagonia hike on a Tuesday, I could do it. The problem is, I think this is how a lot of people that want to live this lifestyle where they fail. And you see a lot of these guys in Southeast Asia where they don't have frameworks and systems and routines. And then they just end up at the bar, they're alcoholics, they're chasing bar girls, this kind of stuff. Right. So there comes a point where the honeymoon ends and you're like, okay, what am I building? What am I doing? And that was what the ayahuasca was as well. Again, I haven't talked about this publicly, but I had been traveling and traveling, and I had already been around the world like 3 times, back to Taiwan to Brazil and back and forth, Istanbul and all this stuff. And I was looking for business opportunities and I almost bought an apartment in Argentina in 2024. But again, it was like, what am I actually doing? Like, I have all this experience, I have these insights, but I'm not doing anything with this. So
yeah,
the ayahuasca helped me realize that I need to be doing something, right? And after you get past this honeymoon, it's different lengths of time for different people, but you have to figure out, what are you building? Are you working for a remote company? Like type A personalities like me, we need to accomplish things. And I'm like, okay, I'm in my 30s, I'm in my prime running years, and people thought I was crazy for quitting my job to live in a van, and then I was going to go live in Mexico. They're like, what is this guy doing? He's lost his mind. And maybe I did for a little bit, but then, yeah, there just comes a point where you have to face yourself and you say, there's a fork in the road. Do I want to be the Southeast Asia guy sitting at a bar doing nothing and going broke, and I'll probably go back home in 2 years because he ran out of money? Or am I going to build something? Am I going to try to put my talents to use in my unique way? And that's when I started to develop more systems and try to figure out, instead of just traveling and riding motorcycles, yeah, that's cool. But what is my purpose on earth here? What am I actually doing with my existence?
Mm.
And I could easily go back to Colorado and get a six-figure aerospace job, right? But I don't want to. That's like the pinnacle of the script. I can't really go back to that. I would never fit in, right? Because I wouldn't go to meetings and do all this other stuff. And all these things that I've seen in these past, 5 years, I'm even more of a rebel. Like I can never even fit in at this point. So there comes a point where if you want to live like a real outside the script lifestyle, don't go to Bali, don't go to Tulum, don't have friends that are exactly like your friends back home. Like you need to integrate, you need to challenge yourself, you need to learn systems, and you need to actually build a life, right? So
Mm.
this is what I learned. Otherwise, you're just going to keep floating, and you're never going to integrate. You're never going to really challenge yourself um, to see what you're made of, right? To see what you're capable of and what you're doing on this earth. That's how I see it.
Sitting in that I've been in that limbo. Um, and when I say that limbo of like a lot of people now, whether you want to stay within the system and the 9 to 5, and like you said, I'm not necessarily against it. If that makes somebody happy, more
Exactly.
power to you.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It just kills me every single day inside. Whereas you might find it brilliant. But people, if they're moving from job to job, or if they're moving from house to house, they don't ever want to let go of something until they've got a firm grip on something else.
Mm.
So it's like they don't want to quit that job until they've got something to go to. And I've taken inspiration from a few people. Um, Funnily enough, Peter Dinklage, who's he did a speech where he was moving to New York, and he basically said and made a pact with himself that I won't take another job unless it's a paid acting job, ever, regardless of how
Nice.
desperate I get. I'm not taking another job until it's a paid acting job. And he ended up down to like his last 70 cents. I think it was literally nothing. Same as Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone's story. I don't know if you're aware of it. He actually sold his dog
Wow, I
to,
didn't know that.
yeah. So he was literally down to nothing. With the Rocky, he had written the Rocky script, and he got offered for somebody to buy it, but he wouldn't star in it. It would be somebody else. And he got down to basically poverty that he had to sell his dog. And I think he sold his dog for $70. And then it was
Wow.
3 weeks later, Rocky was sort of commissioned and him as the lead role. And he ended up going back and I think he paid $5,000 for the dog back to say thank you to the guy.
I never heard
Um,
that before.
but it's like that. People don't want to do it. They want a hold of something. They're not prepared to be broken down that much. They're not ready. And you never will be, by the way. You're not ready for you to be broken down to the point where you can figure out, right, who the hell am I? Who actually is, um if I'm not an aerospace guy, and if I'm not, for in my opinion, in my circumstance, if I'm not a construction guy, then who am I? I I've
Yeah,
I've tied so much of my identity to them things.
exactly.
Then who actually am I? Um, and sitting in that space where you've let go of that part of you before you've even got to somewhere else, and like you've already mentioned, you don't know how long that's going to fucking be. That is such a it's a freeing and horrible place to be in at the same time, because you you have nothing. You're almost at sea with nothing to cling on to. You've got no life ring or anything, and you just don't know where to go to. So I can imagine, is that what you sort of alluding to with that honeymoon phase? After you've let go of all this stuff, now it's almost time to get to work on what you actually want to do, rather than just sitting there and becoming the drunk at the bar.
Yeah, I think it's like the ultimate form of rebellion to live those early years that I did. And it was like a big middle finger to everything, right? I'm going to go where I want. I'm going to do what I want to do. If I get bored, if I book a place for 1 month and I'm bored after 2 weeks, I'm just going to leave, right? That was how I lived for a few years now. And the modern scripts, which I talk about a lot, it gives us structure. A job gives you structure. And especially if you have a high status job, it gives you that external validation, right? If you're at a cocktail party, someone asks you, like you said before, what do you do? Oh, I'm the aerospace guy, or I'm a senior director at this bank, right? And there, it's a status thing, right? It gives you structure, it gives you a sense of your ego and how you and your ego exist in the world.
Hmm.
When you strip this away in a foreign country, they don't know who you are. They
Mm.
probably don't care. They're not in this hyper materialistic society, right? Unless you're in like Hong Kong or maybe Singapore or Dubai. If you're in rural Vietnam or rural some other place, right? They don't place the same emphasis. So you're used to telling people these things and to expect the other person to be like, wow, okay, this guy's important. If you strip this away, even if you have a new high status job, like you created your own company, you're CEO, they don't really place that emphasis. So that's why a lot of these expats and these people they go to Bali. I see the appeal. I'm not
Yeah, yeah,
like hating on it necessarily. I get the nice weather, there's amenities, but you're not really challenging yourself. You're just recreating this old life, right? So the script gives you an identity. It helps you understand where you are in relation to others, and especially in America, which is hyper materialistic. Keeping up with the Joneses is the main thing, right? So, and if you're in sales, you have to have a nice car. You have to dress nice because this signals status. And a lot of these other parts of the world, like or in the Philippines or something, you see these people that have like almost nothing materially, but they are the most happy people, right? And getting back to this is what I think the pendulum is swinging back to this other side. It's not about materialism and all these things. It's about experiences and getting back to the basics, who we are as humans, not follower counts because society or the algorithm told us that, right? If you
mm,
see someone's Instagram profile at first, you immediately, even I still do this. You look at their follower count. I'm trying to train myself not to do this. Okay, what is their actual content? What is their actual message about? But the Instagram, they puts it right at the top for a reason, right?
yeah.
They want you to see that, and then you
It's the
can compare
headline.
and stat.
It's the most important thing. Like I think that's what I've been very, very conscious of. Um, you know, generally, and I've kind of had to be conscious of it, is the fact that, I've been lucky where a couple of guests that have got 500,000 followers have agreed to come on the podcast, but somebody that's got like 1, 2, 3 million followers isn't really going to come on to my podcast because I don't have all the pomp of the Rogan experience. I don't have that. Um, so I've kind of forced, and to be fair, there's only a couple of people that have that following that I'm actually interested in speaking to. A lot of them I find superficial. But then this is where you find the richness of life is you come across people like yourself and people like Dean and people like Jackson, people that don't have a mass cult following, but have really, in my opinion, really important messages and lived experience that other people can benefit from. Like, don't get me wrong, a lot of it is from a selfish perspective. It's like, oh, I want to speak to these people because I find them really, really interesting. But somebody listening to this episode right now, and I suppose we could probably move towards the end with this. If somebody's listening now and um, has felt similar to what you and I have felt, have been the rebel and maybe their early 20s, and they're sitting there and they're thinking, I can't do this for the next 30, 40 years of my life,
Yeah.
like I like I did, and probably you did. Um, what's what's the one bit of advice that you could give them, or would you give them?
I think the first thing is a macro switch of how they think about the script. I think they need to realize there are other ways to live. You don't have to follow this career track. And then once you kind of make that switch, then you can start taking tangible action. You can start building up 6 to 12 months of income and assets rather. I put this in my latest article as well. And then you can start figuring out what does your ideal life look like? If you imagine 5 years from now, what does that look like? Are you in Thailand? Are you in even your home country, but in on a farm somewhere, right? You need to get the income and the assets that are location independent in a sense.
Mhm.
And then you need to figure out what does that life look like? And then if you're going to go to a foreign country, can you even qualify to get a long-term visa for that country? A lot of people want to go to Switzerland. It's one of the hardest visas and passports to get, right?
Yeah,
So you
good
have to
luck.
be you have to do the research. You have to figure out what is your temperament, because a lot of people, they sell these false fantasies online, right? And they show smoothie bowls and cocktails on the beach. And people are in, the UK, for example, and it's gray and the buildings are gray, or in the Eastern Europe, and they're like, man, that looks good. But they don't actually know if that's what they really want, right? So they have to do the self work to really figure out what is their temperament like. Do they want to be around fun people? Are they more introverted and they want to be around a bunch of like German, like kind of that temperament, right?
Mm,
So you have to get the income, the assets. You want to do some scouting trips to these countries that you're interested in. And then can you actually qualify? And then you have to make the leap. You actually just have to trust yourself and realize that, because most of the people I talk to, they're mid career or senior career, they have the skills, they have money, but they built up this network and they're afraid to lose all that. They're afraid if they make this decision, it's irreversible. So you make a series of reversible steps and you kind of prod and you figure out, okay, can I actually do this? You do a 2-month trip, right? And you actually see if you can live there. You try to build a routine and see if you can live there, not just from some TikTok list that says top 10 countries for expats, but because their favorite influencer told them this is the best place, right? You have to go to these places. You have to get the visa, and actually, can you actually build a life there? Right?
mm. I think that I didn't get onto it when I was speaking about Peter Dinklage and Sylvester Stallone. He's not famous, but a very close friend of mine. Very wealthy man, very successful man, multimillionaire. He gave me one of the best pieces of advice that I had, which was everybody says don't burn your bridges. That's famous saying, everybody knows it. He gave me the advice of, if you have decided, and you've got to be specific, like you've already mentioned, you've decided on a course of action, which for me it was this podcast, this venture. If you've decided on that and you've planned it to a T and that is what you're going for, make sure that you burn your bridges.
Mm,
Because when
interesting.
it gets hard, and if you have a bridge to cross, you will take that bridge because it's too hard. If
Hmm.
there isn't that bridge to cross, guess what, Buttercup? You've got to knuckle down and fucking work on through it. Because remember, 6 to 12 months ago, this is exactly what you wanted. You wanted this life. You've
Yeah,
got to go for it. And that, if you have that escape route or that parachute, when it gets a bit, and this is the thing with relationships nowadays with social media. When relationships get hard, who's interested
it's
with
one
me on
swipe
social
away.
media? Yeah, and
Yeah,
when you always have that parachute or that bridge to cross, the reason why your grandparents stayed together all that time is because when they hated each other, they couldn't go onto Tinder or anywhere else. They just
no,
had to go home to each other and work through it.
yeah,
And I
and
think, yeah, that was one of the biggest pieces of advice. And don't get me wrong, it's not an easy thing to do. But that if you are, it's all in the planning. Like you said, you've got to do this. If you want to live in a different country, you've got to go there first to figure out whether you want to live there, whether you can live there, whether you can integrate, whether you can even get a visa. Don't just burn your bridge and think, oh yeah, I'm going to go live in Bulgaria. Oh shit, I actually can't go and live in Bulgaria because I've got a criminal record and they won't let me
exactly.
in.
It wasn't like I just quit my job and lived in a van, right? Like I planned this before. Like I said, I left in December, and October I had my visa approved for Mexico, and I already had the capital. I had the skills, right? So this life isn't for everyone. That's why you do like little scouting trips, and it's really about one's temperament. But I think what took me so long to make content and why my content is so broad is that it's not just about personal preference. It's not just you hate your job. It's about understanding this is where the world is going. This is what's
Mm,
going on in the world. And do you want to not just survive, but thrive? Right. And I think the people that do thrive, they have the optionality, they have the diversification of assets and income and the visas and the language skills. If you're just stuck in the UK and some CBDC or some digital ID comes on, what's your exit valve? What's your escape hatch? You have none. You can't go anywhere. Right.
no, and
So
that's the thing. That I mean, I'm on an island, so unless you're a really good swimmer and you can swim for a few miles, like you have to have a passport.
The passport, and the you have to see where things are going to then. One of my mottos is I'd rather be 2 days early than 2 weeks too late.
Mhm.
So you plan in advance before it's too late. So if you can see what's happening with Iran or something like this, I was talking about this for a long time, right? That's why I have oil stocks in my portfolio as well, right? Um, this is how the rich get richer. They see trends. Sometimes they manufacture the trends, right? And we can go off
We
on
can
that for a while.
talk about Nancy Pelosi on that.
Oh yeah, she's a master trader. How
she's
is this
um
possible?
she's an absolute trading genius, that woman.
Yeah, yeah. So if you can, not dwell on what's going on in the world. That's why I'm saying I'm not a pessimist. I
Mm,
want to understand what's going on in the world and help people realize that as well, and then position themselves accordingly, as well as myself. Right. So if you can be in front of these trends, you can benefit, and you can, while everyone else is, following the script and doing what they're supposed to be doing, right, as society tells them. They're not the ones that are going to be part of the ones that excel in the coming years. So this
mm.
is this is the core of my message. You have to
I
understand
think
where the world is, where it's going, and what to do about it.
I think it's important. I think it's massively important. So if people want to know more about you and follow your content and find you, obviously you've got your Substack and your Instagram. Whereabouts? What's it called?
So Substack
What's the
is called
link?
the Modern Sovereign, and then my Instagram is Chris_Hanna 7, and then I have a YouTube as well at the Modern Sovereign as well. I think
I'll
that's all I
tag
got.
I'll tag
Yeah,
them all in below, and then people can find you. And I think I would employ anybody that's listened to this and it's twigged their interest, even if you're not wanting to do what what Chris has done. I honestly employ you to go and read the articles on the Substack, because they're unbelievable. They're really good reads, all of them.
appreciate it.
And a lot of them make sense as well. It's the logical Chris, funnily enough. How weird is that?
Yeah, that's what I try to do. I try to be logical. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot
It
of
makes
illogical stuff out there that's getting somehow gets all this traction, but
yeah, just a touch, just a little illogical.
yeah, we need more logic in the world.
100%. And from leaders as well, not just from people like me and you, people that actually run countries and have the fingers on big red buttons. Just a little
Yeah,
bit of logic from people like that would go a
yeah,
long way, I think.
would be nice.
So yeah, thank you very, very much for coming
Thank
on.
you.
I've
Appreciate it.
really, really enjoyed it. And yeah, see you later, everybody.
Take care.